Okay, President Murphy, we are live.
All right, sounds good. Let's call to order this Milburn School District 24 Board of Education regular meeting, November 29th, 2021. Can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Voss? Mr. Coleman?
Present.
Mr. Gray?
Here.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Pederini?
Here.
Ms. Roberts?
You stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any public comments? Does anybody have any additional items we want to add? None. Action items. Approve the intergovernmental agreement with Warren High School.
Okay, this is an intergovernmental agreement with Warren High School in order to share student information. Actually, it doesn't change anything about student information that we already share, because it, as it says in the text of the agreement, that we would follow the ISRA guidelines, which is the Illinois School Student Records Act, which we already follow with the high schools. So that allows us to share information with overlapping boundaries. So we already share information like grades and test scores and everything that's in a CUME folder already. So it doesn't make a whole lot of a difference, but the more I felt more comfortable if we had an intergovernmental agreement saying that we do such for transparency purposes. So we will give them an intergovernmental agreement.
So we're putting on paper stuff we already do.
We're putting on paper things that we already do. We're formalizing what we already do. And I think that's just to make sure that parents know that we share information between the elementary schools and the high schools, which we already have the right to do, and you have to do that because our students are going from here to there, so the records have to follow them. So it's kind of overkill, but that's all right. We will do what they requested.
Did we draft it, or did they?
They did.
They did. The same as they have with other feeder schools?
Yep.
We have a motion?
Like
So
to make-
moved.
Second? Someone?
Second?
Who made the initial motion, I'm sorry?
John?
I did. Does anybody have any additional questions? Comments? All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Pederini?
Yes.
The motion passed.
Approve the change of the substitute paraprofessional pay rates.
Okay, so at the last board meeting, we talked about the potential of changing the paraprofessional substitute rate in order to incentivize more people to do paraprofessional subbing instead of just waiting until jobs open up for teaching subbing. We need both, desperately need both. So what we suggested was increasing the pay if they sub for 5 days straight. So on the 5th day, it becomes $120, which equals the current substitute daily rate for teachers, and it'd be retroactive to their first day. So if they're consecutive 5 days, for all 5 of those days, they would get $120, and then every consecutive day thereafter. If they sub for 5 days and then skip a week and sub, it starts again, it starts over. So for some positions that are more long-term, that we wanted someone consistent to fill in, people were less apt to fill in that position because they say, well, I can do it Monday, Tuesday, but I want to hold off in case another sub job opens because I can get paid more money doing that. So this is to help combat that. So I need, the motion that we'll need to pass is to increase the substitute, or the paraprofessional substitute pay rate to $120 after 5 consecutive days.
And
Retroactive
to the first day.
day.
Alright. So, can we get a motion to approve the change of the substitute paraprofessional pay rate to $120 a day after 5 consecutive days, and then retroactive to that first day?
I'd like to make a motion to change the substitute paraprofessional pay rate, increasing it to $120 per day after 5 consecutive days, retroactive to the first day of consecutive employment.
Second.
Is there any further discussion or questions? Alright, roll call please.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Petterini?
Yes.
And the motion passed.
Alright. On to bill approval and payment authorization.
So for the school board expenses, that has to be a separate agenda item. So there it is, you just need to approve that as a separate.
And it requires a roll call vote.
Yeah, we're doing all roll call for all money.
Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, to approve the payment authorization for the school board. Second.
Are there any questions or comments on this? Roll call please.
Mr. Petterini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
The motion passed.
Does anybody have anything in the consent agenda that they would like to pull out?
Why are we having so many resignations?
For different reasons, actually. Two people, Virginia Kelly's retiring again. She's a retired teacher and then worked in our early childhood for the last 4 or 5 years, and she decided to retire. Vivian decided, the bus drivers, Vivian decided to retire, and Leslie's deciding to retire for the 3rd or 4th time. She's worked in our district for 41 or 42 years.
Yeah, I think 42.
Is that effective immediately, or is that effective?
The end of December.
The end of
End of
December.
December.
And they both notified us ahead of time, we're just now putting it on the agenda.
And Kayla worked for us for a couple weeks and then moved out of the state. And I don't know about one.
You get a job doing the same thing, more money, in another district.
So there you got it. It's in a nutshell.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Roll call please.
Who was the second?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Petterini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
The motion passed.
Information and discussion. Property tax relief fund.
We talked about the property tax relief at our last meeting. And Dr. Johns in his business office report also repeated it again. What this does is it's the state's plan to help reduce local property taxes, which is wonderful. This is a great program. One of the best programs I think the state has ever done at least in my lifetime of education. They've had this going for about 4 years or 5 years?
4 or 5.
Yeah, somewhere in there. We've applied for it every year and have been just off the list. So they're starting with the highest taxed districts in the state and working their way down the list. And there are 862 districts in the state. And we started in like 112th, and then last year we were 80th, and now we're in the 50s. We're number 58, finally. Because as they help districts ahead of us, they go down the list. For example, Lakes High School they were in on the first grant, and now they are in the hundreds as far as their local tax load. So what the state is doing is they take $50 million and say, okay, we're going to supplant or give districts $50 million as long as they take that $50 million off of local property taxes. So they're going to basically pay local property taxes, which is wonderful. Now, it's not dollar for dollar, so the district in the first 2 years would lose $183,000 each year in the first 2 years, because we would get $685 and we'd have to give back to the taxpayers $869. So there's a gap there with what we're getting and what we're abating. Abating is the term that we would use to cancel the local property taxes. So that's 2 years. We would do that 2 years in a row. But after the first year, that $685,000 comes, that goes into our base funding minimum.
After the second year.
After the second, it doesn't the first.
Yeah.
So after the second
It
year.
used to be after the first year.
Ah.
They changed it.
They got a little bit
Because people
wise.
were only abating for 1 year and then they still got the money.
Right. Well, it's still a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it still goes into our base funding minimum. So we keep that $685,000 going in perpetuity. And then we can, again, raise our taxes up instead of abating after that. So it gives us a 2-year reprieve for local taxes.
And if we would get it this year, the 2 years that would give us the reprieve would be the 2 years that our taxes are going up because of the final 2 payments on the bond issue, which would definitely help people not see a huge increase. Well,
it would basically keep our tax bills flat.
Yeah.
So the way our bonds are scheduled right now, and our bonds are like our mortgage payments on not this building is paid off, but the other building. So we're still paying that loan off, so to speak. And the way it was structured was that it ramped up at the end. So we paid, $2 million, $2 million, $2 million, $2 million for 20 years or 15 years. And then at the end, it does this up to like $5 million. So that's a huge hit on our taxpayers. Back in 2004, when they first created that structure, it made a lot of sense because there's building, and you don't want to hit the taxpayers right away. The idea is that there would be more houses built by now, and the load would be spread over a broader spectrum, and we wouldn't even notice that on our tax bills. It wouldn't really go up. Well, that didn't happen. When the building stopped, we're still stuck with this ramp, so you have the same people now paying a significant amount on those bonds, which is why our tax bills in Millburn are very high, very steep. But after 2 more years, so we have a $4 million payment, a $5 million payment left, and then that drops off. That's about 25% of our tax bill, our Millburn tax bill, not your overall tax bill, but about 25% of the Millburn tax bill then will drop off. So if we get this, if we apply for this grant now and get this for 2 years, and then we'd be able to levy again our full amount, And on top of that, we'd be getting the 680-some thousand from the state. That would be a huge boon for Melbourne moving forward. If we don't get that, we're probably gonna have to go out for referendum anyway, at least for, maintenance. Because we don't have enough money to, coming in the near future, at least at this point, to maintain our buildings appropriately for the long haul. This building is now 23 years old, the other building is gonna be 20 years old in a couple of years, and at that point, you start to see rooftop units go down, roofs need to be replaced, hallway tiles need to be replaced, carpet, etc. These tables need to be replaced. So,
Can we just see that in the table at the next meeting? I get it, I just wanna be sure, like, for the 685,000 from the state, we'd show, okay, one line would be the abatement, 869, and it would show in each of those years until there's no longer an abatement represented. Another line would be 685,000 grant, and then for whichever number of years, 2 years,
yep,
presumably. And then another line for the base funding, which would start the third year and
Yeah.
show that amount, right?
that's good.
It'd be a real clear representation. So we'd see that the only thing we'd be missing out on, and I just want assurance on that, is 184,000
Right.
for the 2 consecutive years.
Right.
Then the third year, it's not just those, that 685 is a grant, but it is the actual addition to the base funding.
Right, yeah, I thought it was too good to be true.
Yeah.
Until I talked to the other superintendents in the area, like Jim McKay and
Yeah.
Antioch, I said, no, this actually happened.
Yeah. And
I thought they would change that.
Yeah, and when you see
It's
how other
amazing.
states do it, so it's not such a tax burden locally, you
Right.
know? And other states do fund it more at the state level.
And at $50 million a year, you know, it's a small amount for the state,
For
really.
the state,
But for Milburn, it's awesome,
yeah.
But is
if
that-
we get there.
Yeah, is that 50 though, plus the fact that, you know, that 50 then gets added into
The base
the
funding.
base funding for all the districts that received it, so it is ramping up,
Yeah, at some point,
You know.
they're gonna not do it.
Or would there be a second round?
No, this is the third round.
yeah.
Well, I don't
But you
mean,
can't apply for
I mean
it the
for
second
those
time.
that have already
Yeah.
gone
Oh.
through it, and they could eventually cyclically get away from such heavy local
Right.
taxes, right?
Right, you
That would
can't
be
apply for it more
corresponding
than
with
once.
increase in state income tax.
You can actually receive the grant more than one time.
Yeah,
But the list is based on the greatest need.
right,
first.
right,
So,
Which
as,
goes
as,
away.
as districts get help, you can see them move down the list, which is
Yeah.
cool. It's
Yeah.
it's actually having the intended effect
right.
on taxes and on school districts, which is very rare in policy.
How many districts get it every year?
It depends on, it varies because some bigger districts would suck up more of that money. So it depends on how big the districts are that would ask for that money. For example, Stevenson was on the list to get it the first year, which was silly. Stevenson does not, and they didn't apply for it. But they would have sucked up most of the money.
I think it was Rockford, there was one of the districts I saw
Rockford,
that if they opted for it,
Displays.
that would be like 18 million that they would take out of that
Yeah.
49 million. I think 49.7 is the dollar amount, even though it's supposed to be 50, I think it's 49.7 on that chart that they sent.
What would
Processing fees.
happen if we didn't, cause you've been talking as if there's a lot of, there was about 30 each year. If we're at 60, even you said it doesn't seem likely that we're gonna get it this year, based on our, assuming
No,
we
were close.
don't.
When we were 80, we were only a few districts away.
Okay,
It just all depends on who applies.
Right.
okay.
And then once they get all the applications, they rerun the numbers with those districts.
But what happens if we apply and, they take the top 50 and we're 52?
We're out.
We're out for this year, you could apply to next year.
Right, but how would that impact, what Sean's talking about in relations to the taxes and knowing that we're gonna hit that cliff and go over it regardless of whether we get this in 2 years, what impact would that have on us applying for this? You know, say we don't get it for 2 years.
Right,
Because our taxes are gonna drop,
right,
we're obviously gonna drop
a good chunk,
a good chunk.
yep,
So we have, basically, we have a 2 year window to get this.
yep.
And then we're gonna go to the back of the line regardless?
I don't know. Depends on if bonds are calculated in that amount or not, and I can't answer that right
Yeah,
now.
I'd have to look at the numbers.
I'd have to look at how they calculate the formula. That's a good question. Yeah, we might miss it then.
Yeah, once the bond's gone, they may re-baseline
I
what
don't know.
our allocation should be. But who
Bonds
knows?
could
I
be
mean-
outside of the formula, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I think having that table would be very helpful, and we know that's what we're voting on.
Right.
Any other questions? Tech department staff.
Okay, tech department staffing. I am hoping to have a more formal proposal. We're in the midst of completing job descriptions and kind of getting a handle on what we need for our tech support at our schools. So we're talking to, hopefully have time to talk a little bit more in depth tomorrow at our administrative team meeting. And then with the tech department meeting later this week and get some of these details hammered out. But I just want to give a little bit of history of where we're at, where we were and where we're at with our tech support, and I think this will help in our discussions. So in 2019, we had a tech director, we had a tech coach, full-time tech coach, and then each of our media center or librarians, some would call them, were half-time librarian, half-time tech support, tech integration specialists. We also had a network administrator, a senior tech support specialist, and data support specialist. The tech director, who's Joanne Rotundi, I'm estimating about 75%, and that's just, I don't have any hard data on that, but about 75% of her job was dedicated strictly to the technology and operations of the technology department and leadership there. The other 25% was general administrative support and evaluations. She also had other responsibilities. So if I do that, that's about 167 days of her contract, or actually working days. The coach was 180 days. The two tech integration specialists would about half of their job, so that'd be 100 days, because they're on a 200-day contract. The network administrator, 235 days, specialist, 235, and the data support specialist at that time was 177 days. The FTE was 5.5, that's full-time equivalent. So in a position, even though this person is 177 days, she was based on a paraprofessional salary and position. At that time, it was a paraprofessional support, and that's 177 days is considered full-time for that position. This is where it gets confusing and where I'm trying to compare apples to apples. So I'm trying to get how many days of tech support we actually had of people on site in the building. And that's actual days in the building, not including sick days or personal days. That gets too mushy. So a total of about almost 1,200 days total of tech support in 2019. The total salaries for those positions and that support was about $362,000. That brings us to this year, currently. We do not have an official tech director, although I estimate that at least 40 days of my time has been spent in some form helping support the tech team. So you can put my salary in or not. It's not extra money that the district is spending. It's just that I'm directing my energies in that direction this year more than I typically would have. Tech department leader, we have a team leader and a tech integration specialist, and half of their time we've bumped up their days to 215 days just to help out, to cover some of the tech needs that we've had in the last couple of years with remote learning and all kinds of other needs. We have a network administrator, senior tech support specialist, data support specialist, so we still have these 3 people. Total salary about 264. Total FTE is about 4.0. Total days of support is about 960, which would be about 240 short of what we were in 2019. And I'm doing this just to give a little background about why our tech team might feel a little overwhelmed.
I was gonna say, is this appropriate to talk about in public session, or should we?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We have to.
We have to?
We
Okay.
have to. Yep. Because we're not talking about specific individuals or their performance
Okay.
or a contract, so we have.
Because I know we're talking about salaries, or
Not
costs.
specific people,
Okay.
yeah. We don't know.
Sorry, I took the class at the surgeon, I thought I'd ask.
Good question. Good question. And these are all public salaries anyway, so.
Okay.
These aren't being negotiated salaries, that's, I think, what you're thinking.
Okay.
And the names and the salary ranges will be published in tomorrow's newspaper in the Daily Herald.
So,
As part of what they earned last year.
Okay.
So,
Ironically, it's being published tomorrow.
right.
has to be done before December 1st.
All right, well, cool.
Which is why you got my report late.
So we're struggling a little bit, and Ernest Gurley, as you saw tonight on your board report, is our network administrator. He's retiring at the end of this month.
Fun times.
So we're going to be looking for some more support and soon. So at the next meeting, I'll be asking for hiring some support specialists. We may be moving, I may be recommending some internal movement into different spots. And then, or job descriptions changing, and that's what I'm working on right now. So trying to restructure it to get the best support to be able to do this well. That's not to scare you, it's okay, we will get through, but,
So once
just
you.
know that there's going to be a proposal next time of what we'd like to.
For 2 positions, or 2.5 positions? Because if Ernest is retiring and we have 4 now, we're down to 3. So are we is the goal to get back to 5.5?
Yes, or at least 5.
Okay.
Yep. Are there any questions about?
Just real quick, the numbers, if you sell I 17, 18, and I believe there was 19.
That's my personal calculations.
Okay,
So, that's just for my, sorry.
that's okay.
What I did is I took this total and took 3% a year, because this is FY19 and we're currently in FY22. So I put 20, 21, 22. If we would have maintained this current structure on the left,
Or where you'd be, yeah.
where we'd be is about here,
Okay.
this year, and we're at here.
And that's actually a little bit low because we did give It wasn't always a 3% increase each year. Some of the individuals got a little bit more, so.
Right, but
So this is definitely a conservative estimate as to what we would have been.
possibly. It depends. But if you had that same structure, would have you hired a tech director in that same position and moved that forward? And then that person would have made less
Yeah,
than that.
that's true too.
So it's hard to compare. I just like to have context and perspective as I move forward to say, okay, this is where we would have been approximately with that model. Now, what we have done, and this is related, so, are there any more questions about that? So this is what we're doing with all the responsibilities in the tech department. So we're taking the responsibilities, listing out all the responsibilities. This is basically network infrastructure, information data systems management, instructional integration, so how do we integrate technology into the classroom, curriculum support. Every one of our curriculum pieces has a technology component that needs to be supported, whether it's science, social studies, reading, or math at this point, ELA. So it's getting more and more. And then we have other things like ALEX that are supplemental that need tech support, IXL, Lexia, Nearpod, and we have 450 apps that we manage on, that we're trying to reduce, because that's insane, but we're managing 450 apps on our operations on the iPad. So there's that, and then there's general tech support like printers, copiers, toner, projectors, sound fields, iPads. We've got about 1,800 personal devices that we manage every day. And then there's the tech coordination and leadership, supervision of staff, budgeting, and compliance. And this right here is, the SOPA compliance is probably a 10-hour-a-week job by itself. And that's new. That's a gift that the federal government and then our state government gave us last.
And then one thing you didn't list there is all the requirements that we're going to have to be in compliance with in order to be able to continue our cyber liability insurance coverage for next
That's
year as
SOPA.
well.
That's SOPA.
Well, not just SOPA though, it's the two-factor, is that included in SOPA, the two-factor
That is SOPA.
identification and all that stuff, okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, and I've got it up in.
I just knew you were dealing with SOPA, so I didn't read too much about that, but I do get the information from our insurance cooperative saying what we have to have in place.
Yep. And that goes into network and data storage. I had cybersecurity in there somewhere too, in addition to that, but it does under SOPA too. Network and system security. So when you look at this, there's a lot that we're operating under with a pretty thin group of people. So we're gonna be asking for some more help in that area. I just wanted to give the board a heads up. If you have any questions or are noodling about this week and go, hey, what about this, or have you thought of this, give me a email or call, happy to answer any questions.
Do we get any support from the programs we purchase, from Apple, we gotta spend a lot of money on iPads, do they offer any type of support? Not like what we need, but I would think they'd say, oh, yeah, we can help you with that, you just spent X number of dollars on iPads from now until eternity. Like, is there any level of that there, or no? Like they send a specialist twice a year or something like that?
With Apple, somehow it was part of our initial purchase.
Well, we actually did purchase training from them.
Yeah,
We had to pay
training
for
was
it.
part. It was
We had
part
to
of
pay
it.
for that.
We had to pay a ton, but I think we got some discount or something. Part of something, but Apple's very expensive training, but it's very good.
Yeah.
It's very high quality. So yes, we have had a consultant who's worked with us many days as we implemented the one-to-one. So
Okay.
we're kind of past that now.
Yeah, I just didn't know if they had like on-call specialist or something.
Oh, sure.
And when you think about routinely how much we spend on those devices, it's a lot of money.
So we purchased with our last Apple, with our last iPad purchase, we purchased the Apple Care with it. So that helps give us access to that support. And then they've improved that a lot over the years. So when you send it, when it's a broken screen and you send it back in, it doesn't cost us very much to do that. In fact, I think screens might be free.
I think
Up to a certain, it's free or almost nothing now, and it used to be you had to spend $50 plus the Apple Care that you already paid for, which made no sense, so.
Yeah.
And there's some tech support, networking support, app management support that goes with that. So we do have a relationship with them where we can call some people, but it's not significant.
Right.
And we don't have a significant need. Mostly it's problem solving on a day-to-day basis, like my charger's not, my computer's not charging up. What do I do? Or my keyboard's not working on my iPad, or I've dropped it and broke a screen, or or this app isn't working. Yes, half the kids in my class are able to open up Notability, the other half can't get on it. Those are the panic calls that
Yeah, more immediate, okay.
we're working with on a daily basis. And then it's problem solving, how does that work? And then there's a system set up where all of our student information databases have to communicate with each other and with the state. So we have to set up those protocols and scheduling, and there's a lot of moving pieces. It's big. Thankfully, we have some great people in our district who are doing a great job.
Any other questions?
Okay, so I was moving into part of this, just as a kind of a refresher, reminder, and this might be new to some of our newer board members. We've been in the process, the reason we don't have a tech director at the district level is because we've been in the process of shifting our administrative roles from district level roles to building level roles. Not that we don't need, work doesn't go away at the district level, but the concept is, at least for me, is getting the decision-making ability closer to where the action is at the student-teacher level. So getting enough support at that level, I think, is more important for the teachers and the kids on a day-to-day basis. But then it's going, because we're taking some of those positions out of the district level, then there's the coordination pieces and some of those other pieces that are missing that are someone has to pick up. So this has been our history, a little bit of a history since the year before I got here, and this was the first year that, at that time, Milburn West School opened. It's now Milburn Middle School. So at that time in FY6, so 05, 06 was the first year that we had two buildings. We had a superintendent, no business official, we had a controller, comptroller, half-time director of curriculum, and a half-time assistant principal between the two buildings, director of special ed, director of tech, and then two principals, one in each building. The next year, this is the year that I started here, was director of curriculum decided that she didn't want to do the AP or that it wasn't necessary, and so the district moved that position back here. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 district level positions, 2 building level positions. And that continued on and on and on and on until FY17. After FY12, when Dr. Casera retired, we dropped the curriculum director position. This was basically a financial position at that time. We were hurting, and then for several years we had only 6 total administrative FTE for the district. Then we were able to add back an assistant principal. When we did add back somebody, we added an assistant principal back that split between 2 2 buildings. And part of our ability to do that was when CEDAW came into the district and increased the number of rooms that they're using, the number of classrooms that they're leasing from us, and we became a hub, and that requires a lot more administrative presence and a lot more support. So we justified them moving back in, and the extra money that we're getting is rent to pay for that administrator. And then we continued then to shift from the district down to having an assistant principal at each building. Splitting an assistant principal between buildings turned out to be pretty crazy and not ideal. So this is where we're at today. This is our first year of the completely new model. This is a director of special services, same as special ed director, and a superintendent and a business manager. So those are 3 district level people. That'd be Dr. Johns, myself, and Mr. Rollins. And then we have a principal in each building and an assistant principal in each building. So some of that slack is taken up by the assistant principals. So some of the role of dropping the tech director has got to go to the district level and the building level. Curriculum is being pushed down to the building level. Those aren't bad things. I'm just trying to explain what we're doing and why we're doing it and what our theory behind it is. And just as a reminder of what we have been trying to move toward. And here we are.
How's it going?
Well,
What's the review?
it's been tough to determine that because of what I've showed you with the tech department. I'd say the tech department took the biggest hit. No,
Yeah.
There's no doubt. And for a couple of reasons. One is that tech has been last year was so much more needed than ever, and was a big problem, and we had so much support needed. And then that didn't go away this year. We still have a lot of tech needs, and curriculum is more and more reliant on tech, and we've reduced the positions by not just 0.75 by 1.5. So if we can get more help in that area, I think we'll be okay. What's good, what I love seeing happening is what's happening at the building levels with the interactions with the assistant principals and principals and the support given to the teachers, and we've got high quality people in those positions that are really rocking in the building, so appreciate that. So that's going well. Now we have to shore up this district tech piece. Some of the coordination aspects it's just who do you go to for what, who's doing what. We're still trying to figure that out. Thus, going back to these are the roles, and then we're gonna go who's doing it now, and we all share pieces of it, and then who should do it, kind of into new job descriptions. But it takes a lot of work and time and thinking about it. And so what surprised me the most was how tough this transition was. I did not anticipate that. I knew it would be tough, I just didn't know it would be this tough. And I don't know if that's COVID on top of it, not allowing us to fully interact with people as much, or is just because there's so many other moving pieces to the world and we don't have the time to focus. I'm not sure, but
Well, even with the tech area, just the implementation of the new law
SOPA's killing me.
is huge, because that was nothing that we ever imagined we were gonna have to deal with.
No,
And that's an unfunded mandate.
that's totally unfunded, and that's right there, 50,000 a year, easy, of time.
Are there any vendors out there that are providing solutions? I mean, obviously, there are a number of ways to address it.
Yeah, we
Through
have,
process and then technology as well.
we purchased Learn Platform for about $7,500 a year, and that's just the platform where everything's housed to manage the apps.
Mm-hmm.
So that's helping, and we purchased to help with our, they call them NDPAs, and I think Illinois NDPAs,
some type of agreement, but
Yeah, it's something.
it's an agreement with the vendor, I believe.
Yeah, it's an agreement that you have to have with every app on how they're sharing student information. So we got our first 50 of them up and ready to go, but even they're struggling getting to that rate. So it's a lot. We purchased that for another $1,500, I think,
I don't remember the dollar amount, but I know we did that.
just to help us out to get us started. So it's just a ton, a lot more detail. Good intention behind that law, protecting student privacy, I'm all for it. Information floating around, yeah. Will it actually stop people from doing it? And I think it's, when you read all those agreements that you click on, quick when you get an app, nobody reads those. Because it's so much information and so much jibber jabber, no one really understands what it is anyway, so we too easily flip through. So even though all this stuff is gonna be posted on our website and available for people to read, will they actually read it? And then who's going to monitor the compliance with the companies? It's just a lot. It's a lot to process. I just threw a lot of information out there. But I think it's important, and it's things we've been talking about for many years, but being new to the board and having a newer group, we need to review what we've been planning, and Peter, you asked a good question. Okay, so how's it going? And that's what I want to keep reporting on. We're middle of the year of our first year of fully implementing. Rocky.
Now, those first 50 were 4,800.
4,800 for 50?
Yeah. Well, I know it says Illinois Exhibit E service first 50.
Yeah.
So that could be additional, but it could include the other software.
Oh, could be.
But that's the PO that we did in June, the end of June.
It's expensive.
Questions? Thank you. Future agenda items. Wow. More, press policy update. I read something about a district phone thing coming up.
It's in my report,
Excellent.
and it's also a future agenda item, so.
And we've got to put together, we have a calendar committee that's gonna put together a calendar, is that?
We will have a calendar committee. I'm gonna send out a survey to the staff with the calendar. The board got a copy of the extremely early draft, just to give you an idea of this, what's happening. So hopefully by January, we'll be approving a calendar for next year. And next year, winter break's a little goofy, so some districts will go, because I think, I believe Christmas is on a Sunday. What day is it this year, Saturday? So Christmas is on Sunday, so people don't wanna work right up to Friday, but they won't wanna come back on the Monday after New Year's. So, you either have a week after, and then take a couple extra days. I know one of the high schools, and I won't say which one, since I don't think it's final yet, they're taking 2 days off before Christmas Eve, and they're having a 12-day break. So they're extending their winter break.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
There'll be.
Everybody will have an opinion on it. It'll be great.
No. Yeah. Okay. Superintendent report.
Well, I had the calendar as something. We have, I'll talk about COVID for a minute. We had 4 cases that were reported in the elementary school from over break, kids who are sick, so that's not good. I'm sad that the kids are sick, but it's good that it wasn't spread at school. And we had one turn up positive today that actually came to school today, so. But no spread at school as far as we know still. We've been able to keep school safe and no COVID. This is good, especially since other districts around us have had outbreaks in classes and grade levels to the point where they've had to shut down, so. Very thankful we have not been part of that. That's it.
Cool. Business office report.
You pull it up there? Yeah, the first part is just the calendar that we've already gone over. The phone system, this is kind of where we talked about, we're kind of back to the, exploring whether or not it's something we could do jointly with other districts to save money. The last time we were looking at this was about 2 years ago, and at that point in time, we had a very fixed amount of dollars we had available. Now, because we're doing it through life safety, we have, I believe we have adequate dollars available to move forward with the phone system, but doing a joint project with District 117, and then now Lake Villa, and it sounds like there may be another district or two that may be interested in joining with us as well. So basically, I think the purchase would be through CDW as far as the equipment, rather than before we were looking at, I don't know if it was, we were gonna purchase that through Single Path or through CDW, but, so we're looking at shared costs, et cetera. We'll also probably look at a couple phone systems if we wanted to go with something on our own, whether it be a cloud-based system or whether it be where we had equipment here, just so we've got a comparison. Plus the fact that I've got a couple vendors that have been bugging me that they wanna share costs with us, share cost information with us. So it's always good to be looking at what all your options are. This probably would be the joint system would probably work the best for us, because then a lot of the equipment issues and the technical issues of it, we would just pay a annual fee to the consortium to provide that service to us. And then we would just be responsible for assigning, changing the names, et cetera, in the phone system when we had people coming and go.
I hope it works out.
I do too. Because it sounds very positive.
Yeah.
Property tax relief grant we've talked about. The IP Flex, this is something that kind of goes along with whether we do the phone system through a consortium with Lakes and other school districts or whether we do on our own. This is the circuit that provides basically it provides the phone numbers and allows us to use voice over IP for making phone calls. So, but the IP Flex is the newer version of the ISDN Prime circuit that we currently have. The ISDN Prime, I believe you can have 24 simultaneous calls going at the same time, but it's only 24, and then if you reach that 24, then you have to buy another 24. The IP Flex allows you to, and I think when they looked at the number of calls that we currently, the maximum number we've had at the one time, I think is about 15. So it's something that we can kind of scale that up and down, because each time you add an additional simultaneous call, there's an additional charge. So it would allow us to maybe save a little bit, not a whole lot, but save a little bit, but it also allows us that scalability. And I think the max on it still is the 24, but it lets you pay for fewer than 24. So we did have a very, the circuit is already here in the building. We did do, actually over the week that kids were gone for Thanksgiving, that Wednesday, we did a test and we were able to both send and receive calls to the two phone numbers that we had the tech set up in the system. So then now they'll go ahead and port over our phone numbers to the new circuit, and then sometime in December, probably mid to late December, we'll be ready to transition to that new circuit. But this is kind of, it was interesting when Jason and I were on the phone conference with Lakes. I don't know if it was Lakes or Lake Villa were in the process of doing that, and it's really a little bit improved circuit as far as dealing with the newer phone systems. So, you know, I was kind of relieved that something that we'd already decided to move forward with was something that was very positive and we should move forward with.
Yep.
Sometimes you kind of question if some of those things. On the flooring, last week Eric Kumaro from Consolidated Flooring came out and we walked the building to look at hallways. Basically here looking at just the main hallways in the areas where we have the older tile. This time, because we have more time, and I think it's probably a really good thing to have the architect involved, at least in the selection of the material. The Consolidated Flooring and Patcraft both already have a bid existing in a consortium that we can purchase from, which is the same way that we did the flooring the last time. But in looking at it, we're thinking that we probably want to go with a thicker floor tile than what we did in the older section of the building. The older section has a 2.5 millimeter tile. Basically, Patcraft has an option of either a 2.5 or a 5 millimeter. And the 5 millimeter is what we have in the STEM lab. So when you walk on that tile, it's more cushiony. It you know, I think is a little bit higher quality product. So Kirsta looked at some samples of that. She's going to be meeting in a Zoom call with Carly and I, and if Jason wants to be involved, to kind of talk about what she learned and give us some recommendations as far as what she would recommend. And then we're also going to have her do put some color samples together that then we can present to, you know, work with Ben to share with the staff and get some input from them as far as what they'd like to see, because this is basically going to be all the main hallways in the new addition. Well, depending, once we get the information on the tile, etc., then Eric is going to be able to give me, based on their bid, what the cost would be, how much we can do, and then we could scale up and down. So I'll probably have some information for you at the December meeting. If not, I'll have it at the January meeting. And then we could either at the second meeting in January or at the February meeting move forward with that. And I'll also have some information as far as what kind of dollars we have available, capital projects, etc. But we did write for the $50,000 maintenance grant that we would use that money to purchase flooring. So right there, we're already committed to at least $100,000 worth of flooring. Tiara Supplemental Savings Plan. I talked a little bit about this at the last meeting. It is something that we're required by law to participate in. I know one of the districts, the business manager there, has kind of been working with TRS to modify their sample resolution just a little bit, because they're throwing a lot of responsibility on the district. And so wanting to make sure that the resolution that I have you approve is something that will give a little protection to the district. But TRS has already mailed out a several-page brochure to all the members in TRS. I just got mine last week. So, you know, we're definitely going to have to take action on the resolution in the near future. So, but basically they'll start accepting people signing up for the program in January, but no deductions would be made until March from their salaries. And this would be for a 457 plan, which is a IRS, very similar to a 401k, but with the 457, this is money that can be taken out additionally, in addition to the maximum that people can take out for their 403b. So it basically gives them a little bit more. If it's somebody nearing retirement and they want to have more money taken out, they can. But the other thing they do is they're making us responsible for making sure that nobody exceeds the limits, which is, for our current plan, we have a third-party company that takes care of that. So, and then just the rest of it is just, you know, things that I've done over the past couple weeks.
Yeah, what's the volcano?
Yeah, the volcano group is basically,
Sounds pretty sweet.
it's basically a group of elementary districts, in Lake County. And there may be some surrounding county, maybe a few are from the South Cook, no, from the North Cook area. I'd have to look at the list, but basically we do, surveys through the, Forecast 5 software, and we participate in that, so they just had a brief webinar to share the data that's available to us, from that survey. There's all sorts of, we can get raw data, we can do charts, different ways to display it, so that, those are things we can bring back to the board at a later date to share, you know, where we fit within the others. There are also teacher surveys that we do, benefit surveys, et cetera.
Kind of an explosive group.
It is, but it's a fun group, so. And I really like that they've started doing these Zoom meetings once we get survey data available, because it kind of just gives, it was like a 20-minute call, but it kind of showed you showed me what was available and how to pull the information. And then I don't have a whole lot more on it right now, but there is some recent legislation that may, you know, over the next 4 or 5 years, the district may want to look more into solar, because schools now actually get get some of the dollars that used to only be available if you were a business or a residential. And I think there's a certain percentage of the solar dollars now that are targeted to public schools as a part of the whole legislation that came about that is designed to get us carbon free by, you know, if it's 2050 or something like that. So, but this is actually state money, I believe.
Oh, really?
So should we go back in and do another study on the feasibility?
Yeah.
Once we know what the incentives are.
Yeah.
The whole reason feasibility wasn't good for us before is because they took away some of the incentives. And without supplementing solar, it does not pay. So dollar for dollar, solar doesn't reduce costs enough, especially in Milburn's case, because we are part of a co-op, so we get our electricity at a very low rate. If we were paying 7.5 to 9.5, some people were paying over 10 cents a kilowatt hour, or whatever that measurement is that they use. Then, yes, you could get solar, but we were at 4.1 cents at that time.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
we were already lower than what they could get it, and they're like, maybe a 20-year payoff.
Yeah.
So then it's not worth it to do that.
That's not the roof issue.
And
Yeah,
then
and the
you
roof
have
issue is the other piece.
Did talk to the district, the Triple I conference that does, that has implemented them in the field. And they said they were able to do that successfully.
Yeah, and I think,
I don't know how much space it takes, but
I think Grace Lake High School may have done that.
Warren
What's
and
the-
Grace Lake both have fields.
fields,
But you have to have the land to be able to do that, and,
Takes a lot of space.
yeah, it does take a lot of space.
And then you're taking up more green space. Aesthetically, if you put it on a roof, it makes a lot more sense because it's already flat space that's kind of ugly.
But you do want, I know one vendor that I spoke with at the Triple I conference was actually recommending that when you replace your roofs, that you do like a 30-year roof as opposed to even a 20 or 25-year roof. Just because if in fact you have to do something to the roof to repair it or to replace it, you have to pay the cost of taking those units off the roof and then pay to have them put back on again once the new roof is done.
Right.
So you want to avoid having to do that, so you want to kind of time it, so if you're going to do solar, you want to do it kind of immediately after you do a roof replacement, so that you're going to get the maximum amount of years out of those solar panels, you know, before they have to come down and you have to replace the roof. But definitely something that
Definitely.
is more positive than it was the last time we looked at it.
Definitely. We want it to be cost effective and benefit.
Yeah.
the environmentally make benefits, so take advantage of that.
While we're on the subject of green energy, did become aware of all the different options that are coming across the board with, electric buses going forward. So just wanna bring that to everyone's attention, that there are, leasing options and things like that, and didn't you say our contract is
We have one more year on the bus
one more year on our
contract.
contract, so I think that's something we should look into feasibility on as well.
Yeah, and I do know that there is some legislation out there. Currently, I think, an electric bus is if I remember correctly, around $300,000, whereas our gas-powered buses cost about $1,000 each. Plus, 100,000, I'm sorry. And those have come up, because they were about 80,000, and because of the price increases over the last year and a half, a bus that we paid 75,000, well, that we are leasing with the value of 70 or 75,000, is now closer to 100,000. But the other piece that you have to invest in, which would probably require bringing additional electric circuits to the building, is the fact that in order to have the fast charge stations, et cetera, available for the buses, you have to develop that infrastructure, and you have to be able to charge all those, charge all the buses at the same time. So that's the other additional cost in that, besides just buying the buses.
Yeah.
But there is some money coming available that hopefully will help with that.
Yeah, it's down the pipeline, and it might not be something that's feasible right now, but I think it's going that way, so. I think at
It's
least
definitely
being
moving that
mindful,
direction.
how long do we generally sign the bus agreement contracts for?
The most we've ever done is 4 years. We've typically done either 3 years or 4 years.
Maybe not this time.
Probably at the end of the next term, then, it could be.
Yeah, or,
That's
it all
worthwhile.
depends on what kind of incentives come out. If something comes along that they're gonna, give you a huge discount on the buses and help you fund the infrastructure costs, then, we might be able to move sooner.
Gas prices keep going up.
Yeah, everything goes up as far as, fuel and, we've seen the huge increase in, both in
Natural
gas
gas.
and natural gas, as well as, increases in electricity costs as well.
Energy's at a premium.
Yeah. And I think that will continue to go up, especially the electricity, as coal-fired plants and other things start to come off as a part of this green energy.
Can I
Yeah,
make a
kind of
pitch for
mandate.
nuclear?
Yeah.
You can. I don't know if they're gonna listen.
No one will listen.
Yeah, no, I heard some of that, at the tri-conference too, as far as,
Green energy.
yeah,
Got a bad rap.
I know.
yeah.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Jones. Board reports.
I'd like to hear a report from our IASB delegate on what happened, if that's possible,
It was fun.
during the delegate convention, or
So-
delegate portion of the,
I went to the convention. As the delegate, it was really cool. Once they got it going, there was about a half-hour delay because tech wouldn't work, like, at all. So we were trying to do all our voting through the phone. And, when you have, whatever, a few thousand people in there trying to sign up, people who hadn't signed up beforehand, et cetera, that kind of complicated some of the stuff. I'd say on the whole, the things that we had talked about that I had already kind of put forth to you guys got the thumbs up. The biggest one was the district that was in the middle of nowhere that wanted the
That'd be more specific, it's like, everywhere south of.
everywhere south of I-80. What was that one? Let's see. It was the one that wanted the IASB to advance to the state that board should have the option to allow teachers to concealed carry, because this school was an hour away from any response from anybody. There's nobody where they are. No cops, no fire, no anything. So even if they made a 911 call, it's like fastest would be like 45 minutes. So, as expected, that sparked a lot of debate. So you had kind of your contingent from downstate who have been raised with firearms, who go hunting, who take days off for this, who seem to be okay with that, and then you had your other side who were the opposite, were kind of more suburban dwellers, had maybe more skepticism when it came to firearms. So that debate went on for a long, long time. And it failed, but not by much. It was like 46% to whatever the opposite would be. It was very, very close, like within a few percentage points, probably within 10 percentage points vote-wise. So it was pretty interesting, and apparently that's something they keep bringing
Yeah,
up
it's like
each
the
year.
third time.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah,
It was
'cause
about
like-
the same margin last time too, right?
It wasn't last year, 2 years ago. it was.
Yeah, I'm saying, but the
Yeah.
last vote was around the same margin, right?
Yeah, and
No,
people,
it was wider.
Even more
yeah, this one
lopsided?
was
It
pretty
was more
close.
lopsided against, yeah.
And
Yeah.
people were respectful. I mean, everybody got up and
Yeah.
said their piece. There wasn't any like, you know, people chucking stuff at other people or swearing. Like, they were all pretty civilized. But you could tell they were passionate about it. You know, it's not the place to learn about that. You know, I mean, you need to. There's more to it than just saying, "Oh, we shouldn't do this because ABC." Like, there's a lot that goes into that. Didn't mean to cut you off, Sean.
No, that's good, and I think it was a little bit different. The way the vote was brought up and structured this time was a little bit different than the last time.
I didn't read the text this time.
And it sounds like the town got a little bit farther away than it was.
Yeah.
No,
it
The
was-
last time I
the
spoke to
same.
the
Oh, well,
person
yeah,
from
I
the
mean, I was
district.
being hyperbolic, but yeah, it's pretty far away from
Yeah.
anything.
I think
Yeah.
the main problem is that they don't have the funding to have like a police officer presence in the
That-
building.
You know what, that was it,
That's,
and they
that's the
can't,
answer to their question.
yeah, and they can't get volunteers. They can't get any, like our sub-crisis, they can't get anybody. They can't even get volunteers to, like, veteran volunteers to go there,
Well,
for whatever reason.
what does that liability insurance look like?
Yeah, no doubt, right? So there was a lot of, you know, discussion on that. What were the other ones? Yeah, I mean, several were kind of home runs, like the landscaping federal funding, like almost everybody said yay on that. The, board member child care reimbursement, that failed. There were a handful that did not have a timely appeal. So the clean energy infrastructure, electric school buses, and school code review, science reading curriculum, all of those fall within no timely, appeal. So they had to, whoever submitted these bills had to appeal them and resubmit them, and they just didn't make the deadline, so they just get pitched. So they were just removed. I wanna find the exact numbers, cause I know boss is very concerned about it. I don't have a, yeah, no real surprises, to be quite honest with you. But it was enjoyable, it was exciting, I liked it. And I believe I have the email from them that I can forward on to you guys about like what were the things they were going to go ahead and pass, or not pass, but bring up to the legislature and all that stuff. So initially they broke out these 4 or 5, kind of like our consent agenda. They said, hey, can we pass this as a consent? Or were there things that people want to break out, and a handful got up, one being the concealed carry, some of the other one, the cannabis one, people wanted to discuss. Virtual board meetings, people wanted to discuss, so a handful of them got broken out, so we could spend more time actually reviewing them. Yeah. No surprises.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, thank you guys, I enjoyed it.
Did anybody else have anything from the conference you wanted to share?
Just that the latest release of policy review is huge. Just the explanation and summary is 29 pages long, and I think it touches about 80 policies. And so that, you know, as we go through this regularly, that's gonna take some time just to get through this particular release. I invite you all to look at on your site.
Never ends.
No. Most of it's driven by legislation, so it's, you know, there's not a lot of interpretation there, but, yeah, but you have to find it too.
I did go into some on superintendent evaluation. So we should kind of set up a schedule of how we want to do it, timeline, and also create goals so that he knows what he's being evaluated on. So that's something as a board we should probably put on future agendas, or maybe have a meeting with the IASB or something to help create that, or a closed meeting or something like that in the future. But we can talk about it in the future.
I did actually talk to our friend at ISBA. I always mess up that acronym. I don't mean Jason. ISBA. About scheduling that second training that we had discussed. They said they're staffed now and they're like only a month and a half out, so I'd plant the seed. It was like diversity and inclusion. What did I say, or what was it? It was
I can't remember. There's several that you can do.
one more, but we'll all get a token and, you know, have a good.
And would that be Laura Martinez?
She would not be the person coming back out. She was who I talked to in the city, but she said we have a new representative for our region who's great, but
Okay.
I did not meet her. So it's just food for thought. I give everybody some time before we actually schedule anything.
Well, our next meeting is a special meeting, we can toss it on there, think about it for a couple weeks, talk about it, and then start choosing dates on it after that.
If we put it on the next meeting, probably the earliest we could get it would be February.
That seems fair.
Sounds good.
I mean, I just wanted to put it out there. I don't want to try to do anything before the holidays, obviously. January's gonna go fast.
Any other reports? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Have a great night.
I just found it, 47